Thanks everyone for joining us today for our Talent Series Part 2, Mastering the Consulting Interview and Case Presentation. My name is Yanine and I am the Talent Acquisition Lead here in the US. I also have my colleague Rocky on the call with us today. She is our Senior Talent Acquisition Specialist for our India team, and we have two special guests that we'll introduce to you through the presentation. But we'll go ahead and get started. So if you were not able to join us for our first Talent Series webinar in June, that one went through our consulting organization, the positions that we have available. I talked a little bit about the idea of our one consulting team, and then we completed that one going through the overview of the hiring process. So that is where we are going to pick up today. We're going to talk a little bit about preparing for behavioral-based interviews, as well as specifically the STAR method and what we look for in that. And then we'll talk about the consulting case type, some strategies for succeeding in case studies, and hopefully we will have a couple minutes at the end for questions. So to transition into the hiring process for the consulting organization here at ZoomRx is very similar for both the US and India. There are a couple key differences that I'll highlight, but both processes start off with an application review, and we do review your qualifications, and if qualified, we will invite you to a phone screen. Post the phone screen, if you're moving forward to next steps, step number 2 looks a little different between US and India. In the US, it is an interview with a live assessment, and we'll talk about that through the presentation. And then in India, it is an online assessment. Once you complete step 2, if you do move forward, then there is a case study round. It's a little different between US and India, which we'll share as the presentation goes on. Then there is a fit and culture interview, and then we do wrap that up with a final decision. So that's a quick overview of our hiring process. Now today we're going to specifically talk about preparing for the behavioral interviews. And what I want to share with you first is what we're looking for through those interviews and what you're going to find through the interviews as well. And that's easily summarized for us in these 4 steps. We do look for that culture and values alignment. We want to make sure that your values and that our culture and values are aligned and that we are a good match for each other. So you could expect some questions around that. We also want to make sure that your experience and skills are the right fit for the position that you are applying for. So you're definitely going to have questions for us to explore that experience that you've gained and the skills that you have as well. And then we also will look at work environment. We do have a work environment here at ZoomRx that may differ between US and India, and we just want to make sure that that is a good fit for you. And then lastly, it's our team dynamic. So in the first webinar, we spent a lot of time talking about the special dynamics that we have within the consulting organization between US and India and what that looks like, and our efforts to create that one cohesive team. So we want to make sure that those are the dynamics that will fit you best, as well as you'll fit with us as well. So you'll have some questions around that too. Now, specifically for preparing for these behavioral interviews, there are a couple of things that I want to share with you, and one of those is going to be about focusing on your past experiences. Behavioral interviews typically tend to be a little bit different in the sense of when you're on a behavioral interview, you can expect more situationally focused questions, and they may ask you how you've handled specific situations and things like that. So focusing on your past experiences is going to help us explore more specifically examples from your previous roles and ways that you have handled different things from actual live examples that you've had. We also want you to showcase your skills. Think about and highlight what are the key skills that you've gained in those past experiences. So whether that is your problem solving ability or your ability to work as a team or your leadership on a specific project or scenario, think about those and showcase them through your responses. And when you can, emphasize results. We want to see the impact or the outcome that your actions and your experiences and skills have had on whether that is a client or it's on a project team or in your own organization. So whenever you can, emphasize those results and The last two that I'll share with you with preparing for behavioral interviews is preparing for common questions, which we're happy to share with you here in a moment. But more than anything, it's about practicing that, and it's creating those clear and concise responses that is going to give us the most information on your background. And we can do that through the STAR method. So the STAR method specifically is a way of responding to behavioral-based interviews that we at ZoomRx often look for, and that stands for situation, task, action, and result. So if you are asked a behavioral-based question, for example, that could be, tell us about a time where you faced a challenge meeting a deadline, for example. You might want to start by describing the context or the background of the situation that was faced, and then specifically talking about the task. What were you assigned to do? What did you take the responsibility of doing in that situation? The action portion of your response is usually the longer one. We want to know everything that you did that has contributed to the result. And that usually will look like, I did this, I did that, I worked with this person, worked with that person. And then lastly, you wrap up with the result portion. What was the outcome of your actions? Who did it impact, and how did it do that? So in an example for you, for example, in that scenario, you might want to respond in saying, in my previous role as a project manager, we faced a significant delay in a major project due to unexpected supplier issues, let's say. That's the situation. In the task portion, you might say, my task was to quickly find a solution to keep the project on track and ensure that we meet the deadline. The action portion is what you did. So you maybe say, I coordinated with alternative suppliers, negotiated expedited delivery, adjusted project timelines while communicating with stakeholders to manage expectations. And as a result, we were able to complete the project 2 days ahead of a revised deadline. And the client was very pleased with our proactive approach and looked to continue expanding their work with us. So that is a good way to respond using the STAR method that gives us a lot of insight into what was the situation, what was your task, what actions you took, and what was the result. Now you're probably wondering, what kind of behavioral-based questions can you expect here at ZoomRx through the consulting process? So I'm happy to introduce to you today our first guest speaker, Kendall Anderson. She is our consulting operations lead, and she'll give you a little bit of insight into her involvement in the interview process, as well as some behavioral-based questions you can expect and some interview tips. So Kendall, I'll turn it over your way.
Thank you. Am I audible? Yes, okay, I'm assuming so. Hi everyone. Happy to be here speaking with all of you. My name is Kendall Anderson, and I am the consulting operations lead here at ZoomRx, as Janine said. My role at ZoomRx is focused on the internal operations for the organization, really helping us to operate as effectively and efficiently as a team from both a people and process perspective. So on the people side of things, that includes working closely with the talent acquisition team and being involved in the candidate interviewing process. Specifically, I participate in interviewing senior consultant and engagement manager candidates in the US, which I'm going to talk to all of you about a little bit more in detail today. First, though, to provide some background on myself, I've been working solely in the pharma and biotech industry my entire career. Healthcare has always been something I've cared deeply about. And on the business side of things, project, organizational, and commercial operations has always really excited me. So what attracted me to ZoomRx when I was interviewing for a position here almost 3 years ago now was, one, it fulfilled those two passions of mine that I mentioned, and two, it was the ambition and ingenuity of ZoomRx's leaders and everyone I spoke to through the interviewing process. So speaking of the interviewing process here, I am typically involved in interview 1, which is the first interview after pre-screening with talent acquisition. Getting a comprehensive understanding of your background and experience is very important in interview 1, but more important is understanding application of your experience. And we get to that through behavioral questions. So let me give you some example questions, okay? First example. Tell us about a time when you had to manage multiple projects and priorities when competing deadlines. For this type of question, we're looking for how you prioritize tasks, what tools and strategies you used, how you ensured everything was delivered on time. Another example. Tell us about a time when you had to solve a complex problem for a client. Here, we're looking for the steps that you took to understand the problem, the client's problem, how you arrived at a solution, and what was the outcome. I'll give one more example. Give an example of a time when you had to analyze a large set of data to make a strategic recommendation. And on this question, we want to understand, how did you approach the analysis, what insights you gained, and how the recommendation impacted the client. So with all of that, some tips that I can provide when preparing for your interview with ZoomRx are: 1, prepare specific examples from your experience. We want to know how exactly you made an impact, and we want to have clarity on your specific role and responsibilities within the context of a specific project and team. Second, demonstrate your ability to think critically. We are more interested in how you approach a problem than simply arriving at the right answer. And finally, show curiosity and ask meaningful questions. Interviews are a two-way street. So asking thoughtful questions about ZoomRx, team dynamics here, and the role you're applying for shows us your genuine interest. So I hope that this was helpful. Janine, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Kendall. I appreciate that. And that was great insight for behavioral-based interviewing. Now we're going to transition over to the case types that we have in the consulting process. So as you saw through the hiring process overview, there are some times where we have those live assessments and we have some case studies. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of the difference between the two before I turn it over to my colleague, Rocky. But here within our process, we have two types. We have live cases and we have prepared cases. The live case is what it sounds like in the moment. It typically involves a type of business problem that is given to you in the moment, a scenario, or the interviewer may share their screen, share some graphs or tables with you, and ask for your interpretation and recommendations of what you're seeing on the screen. And this is a way for us to see how you can quickly think on your feet, how you rationalize data, how you adapt to what you're listening to or seeing, and how you're able to formulate that into insights, right, and recommendations. So those are live cases, and then we have a prepared case as well. A prepared case is what it sounds like. It's a take home. You have time to prepare for it, usually about 2-3 days. And what you will do with this is create a small deck, maybe 10-15 slides in response to a given prompt. And then you'll have the opportunity to present that to our interview team. And that we will be evaluating you on presentation skills as well as your ability to analyze and put a presentation together in a story format. So those are the two types of cases that we have. But Rocky, I'll turn it over your way for additional information.
Hi, thank you, Yanin. We'll take a closer look on case focusing. Just a minute. Yeah. We'll be focusing on perspective both from India and US side, and we'll understand more about the case. In the US interview process, we conduct a live case study during the initial interview to evaluate real-time problem-solving skills, like Anand said. And in the final round, we'll have a candidate present a prepared case to showcase their presentation abilities. In India, we will engage you with a live case to assess your real time problem solving skills. In the final round, you'll be presented with a verbal scenario aimed at evaluating your understanding of core business concepts and your potential to succeed in this role. Just a minute. When we approaching the case, sorry, when we approaching the case study, we recommend focusing on the four key areas: problem identification, strategic thinking, data driven approach, and presentation skills. Our senior manager Vinod, who has over 10 years of industry experience, will explain what a successful live or take home case study will look like. Over to you, Vinod.
Thank you, Rafi. I hope I'm audible. Good morning to folks in US, good evening to folks in India. I'm excited to be part of this webinar. So I'm Vinod Kumar. I'm a senior manager. I'm based out of India. I am responsible for the consulting, project delivery, and client delight on specific accounts within Zoomaric. I work day to day on delivering the projects that solves the pharmaceutical client's problems. So I have been in this particular firm for 10 years close, and have conducted nearly hundreds of interviews. And I get involved, particularly during the last stage of the interview process, talking about the case presentation and also the final interviews. Okay. So what does that mean when we say, what do we think about this case study, right? So in my opinion, the case studies are a replica of what we do at Zoomaric. So Zoomaric is a primary market research consulting firm. So, and it primarily focuses on healthcare. So the case studies that are provided to you and asked to work on will contain the data points and insights that are focused exclusively on the problems that we work on day to day within Zoomaric. It could be about the launch strategy for a new brand in the form of work, or it could be about the effectiveness of a sales representative team, or it could be about anything that we work on with respect to the patient barriers. And what we expect out of this case presentation is, I think, first and foremost, I think when you are handed over the set of materials related to the case, what we expect is first I want you to understand, I want you to come up with a clear understanding of the client business problem that is getting presented. It is not just a fact of summarizing the insights that's present in each and every slide, it's much more than that. So we always emphasize and value a question behind the question kind of an approach to solving the case study. The question could be like, oh, what percentage of MD prefer a particular brand? But the question behind the question is, what is driving them to prefer the brand B over brand B? Right? So if you are able to get that problem statement, which is beyond the obvious, I think that's when first, I think that's particularly when you can easily say to a case study presentation. From that moment onwards, once you identify the exact line problem, the business problem, the strategic problem that gets addressed through the data that is provided, I think next step is purely about connecting the dots, right? So I think we are not a data company, we are an insights company. We provide solutions to the client's strategic problems. So in that case, we are looking for people who has an ability to synthesize and organize and logically flow the story by connecting the dots across the slides. So that is one other important skill. The second part of this, to the connecting the dots, is, I think, ability to differentiate between what are all the data points that are going to add value to the story versus what are the data points that are not adding value to the story. You need to have the ability to distill clearly and come up with the perspective on, yes, these are the points that are going to add value that will be more ideal and more actionable to be represented to the client. Think always from the client angle. Whatever the case studies that are going to be shared is purely the real case study, the real projects that we have delivered, and that will mimic the real case problems that are getting answered to it. And finally, I think the last part of the being successful at case study is all about ability to synthesize the slides and coming up with the right takeaway that you want to highlight to the audience. Right. So, in short, summarizing what I said, so getting the problem statement upfront very clearly is must, not just about some data summary. Second, once you get that, you will need to find a way to connect the insight across such that you are able to solve this problem very clearly and cohesively. Third, I think you need to find a way to you need to have an ability to synthesize and identify the clear signals and segregate it from the noise. That is the fourth, I think you need to be very, very, very clear with what the exact slide that represents, what does it say, what does it convey, and what's the most important. In this process, we are not expecting any like very right solution. There is no one right solution to this entire presentation. But there is always a right approach to how we are thinking logically about solving a problem for the client. And that's exactly what we are looking for when we are providing the case study. So I think those are my pointers, or those are some of my observations based on my involvement in this. I've seen successful candidates sail through easily. I think that's my vote. What you, Janine, okay.
Thank you, Vinod. Thank you for your insight. Um, Adding to more tips aligned with his insights, starting with an objective is a crucial in case round interview. It sets a clear direction for your analysis, helping you focus on the key issues at hand and guiding your problem solving process throughout the discussion. Being clear and concise is essential during a case round interview. It allows you to communicate your idea effectively and ensure that your insights are easily understood. This approach helps maintain the interviewer's attention and demonstrate your ability to distill complex information into straightforward, actionable points. Visual aids such as chart or graphs can illustrate key data points, highlight trends, and make your conclusion more compelling. This not only adds understanding but also engage your audience, allowing you to communicate your insights more impactfully. Using both qualitative and quantitative data is vital in case round interview. Quantitative data provides measurable insights and support your arguments with a concrete number, while qualitative data offers a context and depth on your analysis. Client centric solution focuses on understanding and addressing the specific needs and challenges of the client. In a case round interview, it's important to demonstrate how your recommendation prioritizes the client's perspective, ensuring that the solution you propose not only solves the problem but also align with the client's goal and values. This approach fosters stronger relationship and drives successful outcomes. A call to action is crucial component of your presentation. It clearly outlines the next step, your recommendation based on your analysis and finding. By presenting a strong call to action, you not only emphasizes the urgency and the importance of your solutions, but also guide the client on how to implement your recommendations effectively. This shows your ability to think strategically and encourage the decisive actions. Thank you from my end. Yanin, you can take it over.
Thanks so much, Rocky. Well, that comes to the conclusion of our presentation today. Hopefully you've been able to get in some insights into how to prepare for behavioral-based interviews, especially with some of those questions that Kendall shared that can come up through the presentation. Think about the STAR method when responding to those if you are going through an interview with us here at ZoomRx. And then from a presentation perspective, I hope you got some insight into the different types of presentations that you can, the cases, sorry, that you can receive through the process, some insight into what can help you succeed with those. And so we have a couple minutes for questions. There is a question box here. If you want to type any questions, we'll hang around for about 2-3 minutes and help answer any of those. We have received one question. So that question says, can you give a specific type of case study question? Vinod, if you are still on with us, if there's some type of insight that you can give there, that would be really helpful. We'll turn it over your way.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I can see in the live interview, the kind of case study questions will try to test your experience and your knowledge working in a particular industry. See, I know for a fact the healthcare industry is very niche and not everyone has the right experience, but you might have worked on something like go-to-market strategies for a brand, right? So we would give you a specific scenario which talks about, okay, I assume a client is launching a brand in this market. So what kind of go-to-market strategy would you define for this particular brand? How do you define that? What are the challenges? What are the specific considerations that will need to be understood by the clients so that they can build an effective framework? So it helps applying whatever your experience into the kind of scenario that we are providing that will test both your ability to apply whatever your experiences and also try to think beyond just the obvious of explaining, okay, go-to-market strategies, point A, B, C, do this, you will be done. So we want you to broaden that. We want that broadening of the horizon as well. So that is one example I can offer at the top of my mind. So hope that helps.
Thanks so much, Vinod. It looks like we got a couple more questions. We have 1 minute. Somebody has asked, do you take PhDs in India? We're happy to answer that offline, so we will share that answer with you. Do you give life science cases? They are life science based, so you can expect them to have a life science component to it and be focused on that. And then the last question that we did get was based on what qualities we look for in candidates that go through our consulting process. We will be doing a session specifically on that as our third part. But quickly, Kendall, are there some things that you can highlight that you typically look for through the process?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, just quickly, if you can think of maybe 1-2 qualities that we look for in our consulting team members, as somebody has asked what those are.
Well, yeah, there's soft qualities and then there's the hard skills. Definitely, well, it depends on the position that you're applying for, and if it's in the U.S. or India. But definitely having a good understanding and competency around quantitative data. Qualitative data is also important. Quantitative data is definitely a strength that we look for. That would be a hard skill. On the softer skill, project leadership and ownership, and communication. Those would be 2 big ones that are very important to the role, and no matter what role, what level we're talking about.
Awesome, thanks, Kendall. Like I mentioned, we will be doing a part 3 session on sharing some of those qualities that we look for in our future employees. So stay tuned for that. We have run out of time. I do see an additional question there, but we will get back to those questions via email. So at the end and conclusion of this, we'll focus on answering those and we'll email out the responses. But thanks everybody for joining us today. We truly appreciate it. Hopefully it was insightful for you. And stay tuned for our part 3, which will wrap up our consulting organization webinar series. Have a good day, everyone.